Hey, hey everybody, welcome to Sergeant Dorsey Speaks live at 5 on Thursday. And you caught me not prepared. I'm just going to put my microphone right here and hopefully you guys will be able to hear me as you come on. Don't mind the cord because I didn't get a chance to hide it. Welcome, welcome. Happy Thursday. Happy Thursday, everybody. And there's a lot going on. I don't know where to begin, but you know where I'm going to begin. I'm going to begin sharing this on my other pages, and I'm going to ask you to do the same thing. No sound, Michael? Is that what you're telling me? You can't hear me? How about now? Can you hear me now, Michael? Let me know. I didn't have my mic on when I first came on, but I'm here now, so hopefully you can hear me. Hey, Barry, welcome. Let me know if you guys can hear me. Dwayne, Barry, George, as you come on. You know what? Yeah, my sound should be okay now. Let me know if it is, because I've got my mic on, everything's plugged in, waiting to hear from you. Okay, perfect. Thanks for that, Commander. You guys can hear me now. So I'm going to go ahead and share this on my other timeline, asking you guys to do the same thing. Share this with your friends and family so that they can hear what I have to say. Because before I get started with the stories that I wanted to share with you today, I got a PSA. I have a safety announcement to make because, listen, I am ever a police officer, right? I am ever officer safety. And today, as I was getting ready to come on with you guys, I was talking to a very dear friend of mine, and the strangest thing happened to him. And what happened was, and you know, we need to remind our family members, we need to remind our young people, and we need to remind our old people. I'm talking about our parents, right? Because Uber is a thing, Lyft is a thing, people are using it more and more, right? And people need to be very careful and be very mindful. And so while I was talking to my friends today on the phone, he was driving through a parking lot, and this older Asian lady, he's estimating in her 70s, started waving frantically at him. And he realized, because he's the police too, he realized that she probably thought he was an Uber driver or something, and was, you know, trying to flag him down to say, hey, I'm your fare. And this lady, he said to me, just watch what happens. I'm going to keep you on the phone, listen. And so I was able to listen in as he had a conversation with this lady. She had gone around to the back of his car on the passenger side rear door, because he had a 4-door car, and she had her hand on the handle trying to open the door to get in. And so he told her, I'm listening, he told her, you looking for Uber? And she goes, yeah. And she goes, you Uber? He said, I'm laughing because that's what I do. But he said, yeah, I just forgot to put my sign in the window, because he wanted to see what she was going to do, knowing full well he wasn't going to let this lady get in his car, right? But anyway, he kind of played along with her for a little bit. And she said, yeah, okay. And she was about to get in his car. And so he told her, he said, ma'am, no, really. You know, he told her who he was, and he explained to her how dangerous that was, that she was about to get in the car with someone who she, you know, thought was Uber, but really wasn't. And so, you know, we were having this conversation because I know that there's a story that's been circulating about a young woman in Utah, I believe, a young girl who somehow met up with someone some kind of way and wound up catching a Uber or Lyft or something to meet with this person. And then the guy wound up killing her and cutting her up and burning her body in the backyard. And so, but for the grace of God, right? There go I. And so, you know, we get complacent, all of us in our everyday lives and what we do in our professions. Police officers get complacent and you can get hurt. Citizens get complacent and you can get hurt. And so he explained to this lady, and she thanked him and said, you know, God looks out for his children. Clearly he does, but he could have been a crazy person. And she was about to get in his car, and listen, it would have been all bad, right? if he were a bad guy. And I know particularly of a couple of instances where, predators, evildoers, if you will, young ladies, young women, my millennial sisters, guys are charming and sweet and kind until they get you where they want you, either in a car or in some secluded area, and then they will flip on you on a dime, and they will get profane and they will get ugly and they will get aggressive, because now they're using force and fear, if they don't have a weapon, to intimidate us girls, right? To get us to cower and comply with whatever it is that they want to do. I know this firsthand. I was talking about this the other day, and I know I'm rambling. I'll get to my stories in a minute, but just hear me out. Years and years ago, when I was a young police officer working Southwest Division, I had a victim of a rape who was very, very descriptive when I talked to her and interviewed her about a rapist. And because of her description and her detail and her memory and recollection, my partner and I happened to see the car a couple of days after my victim had been victimized. She had a partial plate, and she gave us information that helped us find this car. And when I stopped the driver, I got so excited when I saw him, because I was a young officer, and I told my partner, that's the car, that's the car. We saw the last 3 numbers. It matched my victim's description. And long and the short of it is, what this guy would do is he was hunting young girls every day in the USC area. And he would go up and look for women early in the morning, young girls on the bus bench or whatever, on their way to school, on their way to work. And he was very nice and, offered them a ride. And, if you're on the bus and you're running late, you might be inclined to accept that ride, right? And that's what these young girls did. And as soon as they got in the car, what they didn't know, because he had tinted windows all the way around, what they didn't know is that, they found out once they got in the car, is that the passenger side was taped with electrical duct tape, right? And so once they got in the car, he locked that door, and then he said, B, get your A in the back seat. But not that nice, right? And he forced him in the back seat, and then he would drive them to some secluded location and rape them. And that was in the 80s. People have gotten more sophisticated and more savvy and more creative in how they victimize you. Predators are out there. And ladies, you guys need to be careful when you call for an Uber. I heard my friend tell the lady, you call for Uber, don't you have a picture of the driver on your phone? And she was an older lady, so she was a little confused, and maybe the language barrier had something to do with it too. Her being Asian, maybe she didn't understand how Uber really works, and that she could actually look at her phone and see the picture of the driver and see the license plate information of the car that she should be getting in. And if an Uber driver tells you, I just forgot to put my my sticker on my window, do you still get in the car? You got to be very careful. So family, have these conversations with your loved ones, and share with them that, you need to be careful and you need to be mindful, and don't be complacent, because complacency, it really does kill. So I just wanted to share that with you, because we were just having this whole conversation just before I went on with you today. And, I thought it was something that you guys needed to be aware of. And so that's what I do. I share information. Now, welcome to my Facebook family. Welcome to my YouTube subbies. Sergeant Dorsey Speaks live at 5 on Thursday, every Thursday. For those of you who don't know, who might have missed it, my YouTube podcast dropped on Tuesday, every Tuesday. And there were some really interesting stories that were on my podcast. So be sure to check it out. Sergeant Dorsey Speaks on the podcast platform of your choice. Subscribe so that you'll get a notification every Tuesday when new content drops. One of the stories that I did discuss on my podcast, and I just want to touch on it here, had to do with wait a minute. Let me back up. Before I talk about my podcast story, let me talk about CNN International, because you guys on Facebook have seen, and my YouTube family, you've seen it by now because I put the video up on YouTube, my interview with Amara on CNN International a couple of nights ago. And this was regarding the white guy in San Francisco who called the police on a black guy because he said the black guy was trespassing, right? And there's a whole big brouhaha. There's been a lot of discussion with my YouTube subbies about, some folks are saying that was, his name is Christopher and he has an unusual last name, so I'm not going to butcher it. But they were saying, there's, a contingency, and you probably know that group, right? Who said he was within his rights. He had every right to, not cower in the corner, is what one of my subbies said, and question Mr. Wesley Michael, with regards to whether or not he had a right to be in that building. If he really knew someone in that building, right? This guy had a right to do that. And this guy did this foolishness with his small child, if you've seen the video. So my thing is, listen, handle your business. In the voice of my president, number 44, my president, proceed, Governor, because if it makes sense to you to confront somebody about entering a building that you don't work for as security with your small child, if that makes sense to you, proceed, Governor. Proceed, Governor. I remember years ago, and again, another C story, being a young police officer, I was in the police academy, and they told us of a story that had happened just while I was in the police academy, of a police officer who was off duty, police officer off duty, and he got involved, got engaged in some robbery suspect apprehension. He was entering a grocery store with his small child, and he decided to do police work, something that, they teach us trained professionals not to do on your own for a lot of reasons, because we don't have the benefit of backup. We don't have the benefit of a police radio, and, stuff can go sideways. And so they don't encourage police officers to do anything but be a good witness if you think you see a crime occurring. And so this officer got involved in trying to apprehend a robbery suspect, and the suspect shot and killed his son. So I think about that as I'm, having debates, if you will, and I don't debate much, and I'm not going to have much more to say on this topic on YouTube. But I think about that because, listen, it turned out good this time because young Christopher, he didn't get the wrong one. And family, some of you understand what I mean by the wrong one, right? Because I said that to someone on YouTube and they're like, what do you mean the wrong one? So I'm going to just let you figure that out, sir. But if you guys think that makes sense, then I think he should do that over and over again. Because at some point he will get the wrong one. And it turns out that the gentleman that he was trying to prevent from entering his building had a legitimate reason to be there. He knew the person who lived there, and the person showed up in the midst of this confrontation. And we know that he wasn't trespassing because when the police showed up, guess what? They didn't arrest him for trespassing. So, I just think it's nonsensical if this man, in my opinion, if the man felt that there was a crime occurring in his presence, then he should have just been a good witness. Get on the phone and call the police. You don't even have to tell the trespasser, if that's who he is, that you're calling the police. Just call him. But he wanted to be confrontational, and it wasn't about him really believing this man was a trespasser. This was that white privilege thing that they think they have. And so he's going to make sure you don't go in because, listen, I understand the purpose and reasons behind security doors and gates and gated communities, right? I live in one. I can't stop somebody if they follow me into my gated community. I'm not going to stop someone and ask them, or demand that they wait. You need to wait until the gate completely shuts and then use your clicker to open the gate again. Who does that? Nobody. When you walk into a building that's secured, if someone comes in behind you, most people just let you come on in. You've got to now identify yourself and who you're going to see. I don't know who you are. Who are you coming out? Right? I got questions. So, anyway, we're having a lively debate over on YouTube about that whole situation. And I said what I said, and I meant what I said. So there's that. Now, let's get to it. So this whole thing with contaminating food products is really starting to be bananas, you guys. I read an article. This is an older lady that is contaminating food over in Florida. And she's taking it to a whole nother level. Evidently, this lady has a business, and there's a shared restroom, and sounds like maybe a little hallway or something between her store and an ice cream parlor next door to her store. And so what this lady did in St. Petersburg, Florida is she peed in an ice cream churning machine. She picked her nose and then stuck her fingers in these people's ice cream containers. I guess there's some kind of dispute going on between the two businesses about parking and, something. And so this lady is hot about it, clearly. So she went to Lulu's Ice Cream. And Lulu's Ice Cream, for those of you who like to go there in St. Petersburg, it's 19823 Gulf Boulevard, right? And it's in Indian Shores. Now, these people are out of about $2,000 worth of ice cream product because once they realized, and listen, this didn't just happen one day. They found out from surveillance cameras that this has been going on for a minute. And, I don't know I don't know who came in there and got that special ice cream, but if anybody been sick or feeling a little queasy because you've been, eating ice cream at Lulu's, it's because old girl next door urinated in the damn ice cream churning machine. And they saw her on video, and she went into the freezer and she's opening up containers and she's going to the bathroom and she's leaving the bathroom door. She must have something wrong with her because she's using the shared bathroom. So they see her on video and they see her not wash her hands, and they see her spitting in some of the food product. And then she used, the ice cream churning machine as a toilet. And she emptied that toilet after she used it as a toilet. She used the ice cream churning machine. I guess it sounds like a bucket or something. So she urinated in it, and then she emptied it into the sink where they had ice cream equipment and bowls and other stuff. I'm assuming in the sink with maybe clean bowls and equipment already. Anyway, yeah, she cost this mom and pop business $2,000 worth of product because they just had to throw everything out. They couldn't trust any of the stuff that was left behind because of what they saw on video. And so, I don't know if people are seeing this stuff on TV and they're thinking that this is cute and funny. It's not. It's not. And in addition to the young woman that they probably by now have identified who licked the Bluebell, that was the first I heard of. There's a gentleman also in Louisiana who opened up a container of Bluebell ice cream and licked it over in Assumption Parish. Assumption Parish sheriff deputies arrested this guy. He's 31 years old. His name is Lanice Martin III. And on Saturday, he was seen doing the same thing, opening up a doggone freezer and, getting a container of Bluebell and licking it. And somebody took a picture of him doing it as well. I don't know why you guys think that that's funny, but it's not. And you need to stop it. It's nasty. It's nasty. And I hope that these authorities throw the book at you. I hope they are not lenient with you when it comes time to sentencing, even if you are a first offender, because nobody should have to worry about things that they purchase and from a store and not be comfortable thinking that it's okay, that it's safe, that it's not been contaminated. So I hope that that's the last that we hear of that kind of foolishness. But I talked about this. I think I talked about it. I know I had reached out to this young man on Facebook because I was so bothered by this when I saw it. And so if I mentioned it and you've heard it, just bear with me because I think this story bears repeating. There was a young man in Florida. His name is Cheryl Dukes. And this was in June, but it became known somehow in July because he had been trying to work with the authorities there to try to get some resolution. And they kind of been stiff arming him. They were kind of, not really answering his questions and weren't being attentive to his needs, if you will. But what happened is back in June, Cheryl Dukes was in the hospital. He had pneumonia and something else. And he was in the hospital and he had been given permission by his nurse to take a walk. Now, I don't know if he didn't understand that he shouldn't leave the hospital grounds or if he didn't realize he had left the hospital grounds, but he stepped outside to take a walk. Now, I've never seen anyone, I understand different states do different things. I've never seen anyone walking around, in a hospital gown with their little naked ass flapping in the wind, right? Outside. Usually you got to go through a lot to get outdoors. So I don't know the setup on this hospital, but nonetheless, he was outside walking with his boyfriend, and a security guard approached him. Now, the security guard, he wasn't even security for the hospital. That's what cracks me up now. A few days later, I'm finding out more detail, at least from what's being printed. But this security guard sees him outside with IV. He has an IV hookup. He's got the pole and he's pushing it with his hospital gown and his wristband and all of that. And they're just getting a little exercise. And the security guard approaches him, and long and the short, he accuses Shaquille of trying to steal hospital equipment. He accuses him of trying to steal the damn IV pole. And he threatens to have him arrested. And so now they get into it, right? It's Shaquille, his boyfriend, and another friend of his, and they're walking outside, and Shaquille is telling him, listen, my nurse said I could come out and get some air and walk around a little bit. Talk to them. The security guard, not for the hospital, never talked to the hospital. He called the local police, and he called, which police department? I forget which police department he contacted, but anyway, he called them. They came out, and you would think that somewhere in the group would be somebody with some common sense, somebody that would ask some questions, go back and verify with the hospital, right? But they actually arrested this young man for theft and, resisting and interfering. And they arrested his boyfriend, his buddy, everybody that they could, right? They arrested them because once they put hands on you, you know what I say, they got to take you to jail for something. So everybody gets to go to jail for interfering, for arresting, obstruction, whatever nonsense they came up with. I haven't heard that the charges have been dropped just yet because the police department is still looking into that. But living while black, hashtag living while black, you guys, it's a thing. And so, whether you're visiting friends, whether you're convalescing in a hospital, you need to be careful. Now, I don't know if, either party could have done something a little bit different to diffuse the situation. I would imagine it would be very off-putting to have someone accuse you of stealing a damn IV pole as you're trying to recuperate from a hospital and threaten you with arrest. And so anyway, that happened. The police department is investigating, and, they won't say much more other than they're investigating because, listen, isn't that what they always do? They say that they can't discuss it because, it's under investigation because they understand we have short-term memory, and in another, 48 hours, like my friend said, no, everybody will be moved on to the next outrageous thing, and we won't be thinking or asking questions about it anymore. Shaquille's got questions. He'll be still asking and waiting for answers. And so I'll keep my ear to the ground, and I'll let you know what I find out about that whole situation. But yeah, bananas, just completely crazy. And listen, Florida, they don't disappoint. I could talk to you seemingly every week. I have a Florida story, at least one, sometimes like this week, 3 to tell you about in Florida. And so I talked about this too on my podcast on Tuesday, and now there's been an update. And so I just want to share the update with you. But there was a fired Jackson County deputy by the name of Zachary Wester. And he has been under investigation for many, many months. He was first suspended back on August 1st, and then fired shortly thereafter because it was believed that he was planting drugs and other things on folks. And so now he's been arrested and charged on Wednesday. He was charged and arrested for racketeering and numerous other charges, it's reported. He's been charged with 52 counts. In addition to the racketeering, he's also been charged with a number of other felonies, which include official misconduct, false imprisonment, fabricating evidence, possession of a controlled substance. That's the stuff that, the narcotics that he was holding on to so he could plant on other people, right? And then he was also charged with the misdemeanor case of perjury. So, in addition to the controlled substance, he also had other drug paraphernalia. So he's facing 52 counts, and it's reported that he was supposed to be back in court today. So unless he cops a plea to something, there will probably be a few more weeks of, back and forth court hearings with regards to that. But says during the internal investigations, the internal affairs deputies searched his patrol car, and they found 42 different pieces of drug paraphernalia. They found 10 baggies of methamphetamine, 5 baggies of marijuana. Yeah, that was just some of what they found in the trunk of his car. So he must have been a planting fool, right? He's got all this kind of stuff in his car every night when he goes out. So thank God they figured it out. And so now young Zachary Wester is behind bars in Florida for that. So that's that. Now over in Leon County, the Leon County Sheriff's Department, the chief of detention, his name is Jeff Beasley. He resigned on yesterday at the conclusion of an administrative investigation. And I guess, the chief over there was involved in some shenanigans and said he wasn't following policy. Don't know what that means, but they said he wasn't following policy, and evidently it was a big enough policy that he didn't follow to get him shown the door. Beasley joined the Sheriff's Department in Leon County back in 2017, and he had been previously the chief of investigations before he became in charge of detentions over in 2018. And before that, he was the inspector general over at the Florida Department of Corrections. So, you know what I say all the time, foolishness starts at the top, right? Every police officer who cuts up, or every police chief who pretends that officers don't cut up, was once an officer themselves, probably cutting up. And some of them go on to be police chiefs and commissioners and deputy sheriffs and chiefs in charge of detention facilities, and they still cut up, right? So he's facing some very serious charges over there. And then also, last week, I talked about this on my podcast. I didn't talk about it with you guys on Facebook, but there was a LAPD officer who got caught. He was a detective who got caught over in Anaheim Stadium, right, where the Angels play baseball. He's over there in the stadium at Anaheim videotaping men in the restroom. So that was news last week. Well, the Sheriff's Department, LA County, was not to be outdone. So they now have their own little perv. He's a detective. He's a LASD sex crimes detective. And he just went ahead and pled guilty to molesting a teen, a young woman whose case he was responsible for investigating. He was working the sexual assault case for this young woman. He befriended her, this LA County deputy, LA County detective befriended this young woman. And so now he's a former LA County Sheriff's Department detective. He pled guilty to child molestation involving this teenager whose case he was supposed to be investigating. She had been victimized by someone else, and then he re-victimizes her. I think she was 15 years old. And so here's the story. His name is Neil David Kimball, 46 years old, lives in Agora. Like how they put all your information out there, right? Folks probably circling his house right now with signs and doggone megaphones, right? Neil David Kimball in Agora. So here's what he pled to. He pled guilty to a lewd act with a child and unlawful sexual intercourse. That's what he pled to in Ventura County. But let me tell you what he was charged with. Let me tell you what he did. He was charged with forcible rape against a minor, 14 years. He was also charged with witness intimidation by threat or force. And like I said, he met this young girl because she was a victim. She was 15 years old. He befriended her. And this happened back in November of 2018. He had been molesting this little girl. Well, he was taken into custody last year in November 2018. He just pled guilty this year. But this occurred, they say, between October and December 2017. So it's taken a while to work its way through the system. Now, if and when he's sentenced, and who knows what the penalty will be, he's expected, based on his plea, right? They gave him a deal. And so based on his plea arrangement, he's expected to get 3 years in prison. 3 years in prison for messing up this little 15-year-old girl's head. So, you know, it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate. And, you know, with all this going on in the news right now, with the whole, you know, Jeffrey Epstein and, you know, folks who know folks and people who are in high places, and you do bad things and you hurt people physically and emotionally and mentally, and then you get a slap on the wrist. It just doesn't seem fair. I'm trying to read a comment by Jean. You said, how insulting. Like you said, first thing should have been contacting the hospital. Oh, yeah, you're talking about the young man that was detained outside the hospital. Yeah, that was bananas. But anyway, so that's what's going on with LA County deputies, sheriff. Yeah, that's what's going on. Now, over in Honolulu, there was a prosecutor over there. She's a former prosecutor now, and she's been held in federal detention. Her name is Catherine Kealoha. Her and her husband, who happens to be a police chief over in Honolulu, have both been charged with conspiracy. It's reported that this is Hawaii's biggest corruption case involving Catherine. And I guess she was a big muckety muck over there in Honolulu. Says she's driving around the island in a little Maserati. And, you know, she was a high ranking deputy prosecutor and lived in a very swanky Kahala apartment home, something or other. And, you know, but the husband, who's a police chief, they probably, you know, made good money, right? They had good salaries. And so now a jury has found her and her husband, who retired, guilty of something. So she is in federal prison, racketeering or some kind of corruption. But anyway, so listen, you know, just because you're a police officer or a prosecutor, you know, they're drawn from society, right? Police officers come from society, and you get some good ones. Prosecutors, you get some good ones and you get some bad ones. Not unique, you know, what goes on to non-law enforcement type folks. So anyway. Now, on to NYPD. NYPD officer was seen, and I love the way their commissioner over there, he stands by his officers. I don't care what kind of stupidity we see them do. It's always all good in New York. There's a police officer who was in a Suburban, some kind of SUV, and he saw this young man riding a bicycle, the officer says, in a way that was reckless and dangerous, and he had earbuds on, and he went through a red light. So the officer decided, in order to save this young man's life and prevent him from hurting himself or others, he just run over him with his car. So we have an NYPD officer now who used deadly force, because listen, when you hit somebody with a car, that's assault with a deadly weapon. He could have killed him. And there's pictures of it on the internet where you see the car on top of the this city, I think it's a city bank bike, one you could rent, right? You know how they have these bicycles all around town that you can rent. So anyway, this guy was he didn't stop, and the officer says, I told you to put your hands up, I told you to stop, and you didn't stop. And so the guy's saying, hey, well, what's up? You know, once he realized the officer was pursuing him. And anyway, it just went all bad from there. But the fact that the officer, you know, he says he got on the loudspeaker and he told him to stop over and over again. And he threatened to forcibly stop him because he was, you know, trying to save him from hurting himself. So he ran him over. And now the police commissioner is, you know, saying, you know, that's kind of what we do. That's how we protect people in New York. So if y'all riding bikes in New York City, be very, very careful. You are liable to get run over by an NYPD officer. Ooh-wee. Get ready, brace yourself. Dallas, Texas. Amber Geiger's trial will soon be starting. What's going on right now? We haven't heard a whole lot about that. Amber Geiger is the white female police officer who shot both of John. Said she had went into the wrong apartment, if you remember, and she shot and killed him. Well, her trial is coming up. It's set for September the 6th. But right now what's going on is that her attorneys are trying to get a change of venue because they think that they are not able to get a fair and impartial jury. And they want the trial moved out of Dallas County. So there'll probably be some back and forth wrangling with regards to whether or not her trial will actually be heard in Dallas County, anyway, is what it says. There was a very tragic incident that occurred in Arizona. And listen, Arizona is off the hook, you know, in terms of police and community. But there was a young man who was stabbed recently because this white guy, his name is Michael Paul Adams, 27 years old. He stabbed 17-year-old Elijah Al-Amin because Elijah was sitting in his car listening to rap music. And 27-year-old Michael Paul Adams thought that he should be proactive because rap music being listened to was concerning and frightening to him, is his story. So he walks up behind this young man. I believe he was in a convenience store, either trying to enter it or right outside a convenience store. He walks up behind the kid, grabs him, and cuts his throat because he said he felt threatened. And so now Michael Paul Adams is being charged with first-degree premeditated murder in the stabbing death of 17-year-old Elijah Al-Amin. You really do have to be vigilant. You have to be careful. You have to be mindful everywhere you are, everywhere you are. And if you guys are not having conversations with your family members, your young people particularly, because I know my kids think, oh, Mom, you watch too much TV, you know, you watch too much news. But, you know, we are at a place now, all of us, in order to be safe, we need to be mindful of where we are. We need to be mindful of who's around us, and we need to be mindful of ways to leave a place, right? Entrances and exits, even if it's an employee exit. I'm at the point now where when I go someplace, I want to know where's the secret place the employees have to scurry into if something jumps off, so that you can go and be safer, so that you can exit a building quickly. You know, it's crazy what goes on. And so, you know, when I hear about these things, I will just, you know, I'll share them with you so that, you know, I can remind you to be careful. And hopefully, when I remind you, you'll remind your loved ones as well. I mean, you know, every time something crazy happens, they always say these are the end times. I've been hearing these are the end times for probably about 15 years. I don't know that it ever ends, right? But these are very serious and dangerous and scary times, and people are emboldened to confront us living while Black for a variety of reasons. Y'all know what I'm talking about, right? So I don't foresee it getting any better. I see it getting worse. And, you know, I want you guys to be careful. I want you to be safe. And I want you to be mindful and aware of your surroundings. So that's it, you guys. Until next week. For those of you who are new, thank you. Share, like, follow Sergeant Dorsey Speaks. For my YouTube subbies, subscribe, tell a friend, and everybody share this on your timeline so that your friends and family can get these safety tips that I shared with you today that I think, you know, we need to be mindful of. For those of you who have not had a chance, subscribe to my podcast, Sergeant Dorsey Speaks, on the podcast platform of your choice. Visit my website, Sergeant Dorsey Speaks, SGT for Sergeant, abbreviation. If you have any information, thank you to everybody who shares stuff with me from around the world, because I can't be everywhere. And I appreciate you guys sharing stories with me that I might have missed. My email address is sergeantdorseyspeaks@gmail.com. So if you have some information that you you know, want me to share, if you have some, if there's a story you want to know what I think about it, I appreciate you wanting to know what I think about it. If you have something like that, just drop me an email, sergeantdorseyspeaks@gmail.com. Visit my website, sergeantdorseyspeaks.com. sergeantdorseyspeaks.com. And my major general website is Sergeant SGT Cheryl Dorsey.com. So until next week, you guys, be good, be safe, have a good weekend.